Okay, all right. So it is noon here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, everyone. Welcome to the second session of the Share My Screen series on accessibility. I'm Katrina Boylan, and today I will be walking you through Canva's accessibility checker. Now, for those of you that are new, the Share My Screen series is our opportunity to just literally share our screens and show you the tips, tricks, best practices, the software, that we're using to create our health communication products in our everyday jobs. And so, as I said, this is the second one of this series. So if you missed our first session on accessibility for PowerPoint, that is available on our YouTube channel already. And you can find us just at CIRTC, CIRTC _ on YouTube. This will also be posted on there, as are all of the other Share My Screen series and some other videos and trainings that we have available. The next session, which if you're here, you're already registered for, is on accessibility for social media. And I'll talk a little bit about why we do need to take those extra steps in this session. So before we get in, though, I do want to just define for everyone what I mean by accessibility. So I am talking about the things that we need to do to share information in a way that people can truly access it. And so that means things like seeing, hearing, and being able to engage with it. And so what I'm talking about is things like alternative text, contrast, text size, captions, those types of things. I do ascribe to a larger version of accessibility. So we can think about accessible language, accessible imagery, those types of things, but that's not what I'm talking about today. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen and let's get going here. And I'm just going to share my whole desktop so you can see what I've got here. Okay, so here is Canva. And before I get into this, I just want to say a lot of the things that we have been showing on Canva are only available in the pro version, but the accessibility checker is available in the free version as well. So doesn't matter what kind of Canva you've got, you should be able to check your accessibility. The other thing is that you can run this on any type of content. I will say the video has a little bit extra. We do want to talk about captions if we're creating videos, but I'm not going to get into that today. I'm just going to focus on Canva's accessibility checker and how to use it. So if you're doing videos, I do recommend you add captions, but again, we're not going to cover that today. All right, so what I'm going to do is just walk through some examples that demonstrate what we're talking about here. So here's a promo graphic that I created, and so the first thing that I'm going to do is show you where the accessibility checker lives. Now, Canva made an update, I don't know, last month or 2 months ago. And it used to just be kind of buried out. You had to click through a bunch of things, but it is now right front and center under your file tab under accessibility. And you're going to go ahead and click on check design accessibility. And so this box will pop up to the side here, right? How big this is, so we get a better view. And so Canva doesn't check all aspects of accessibility, but it does at least get us a lot farther. And so this won't fix every issue, depending on who your audience is, especially, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it's a great place to start if we at least can get our products a little farther along. Again, a great start. Okay, so a couple of things then that Canva checks on. Typography, I'll show you that one in a second because we don't have any issues here with typography. That has to do with the size of the font. But as you can see, I do have a contrast issue. And so we're going to start here. So the first thing Canva is going to do is check for contrast. And so what I mean by contrast is I wanted to just show you the actual definition here. Here it is, the brightness between two colors. And so again, it's how easy is this going to be to read on the background. And so you've got some examples here, right? And so the way contrast is evaluated is they come up with this ratio, as you can see. And so what you want to do is there's a minimum ratio you need to hit in order to meet your contrast guidelines. So the accessibility checker for Canva will tell you, hey, you've got low contrast text here. You need to change it. And here is where it's actually super useful to have your brand guidelines entered into Canva as well. If you don't know how to do that, that was actually the first Share My Screen series, and that is available on our YouTube. I walk through how to enter your brand guidelines. So if you've got brand guidelines and Canva flags a contrast issue, it will suggest a color that meets the contrast requirements. And so then you can just pick the color. And actually, this was what you saw earlier today instead of that orange. And so the reason I want to bring this up, though, is that the reason I used this orange on this kind of minty green background is because I want to illustrate how different programs look at contrast. The only way I found out that orange on green violated contrast standards was because I used it in Canva. I had originally created a green background with this orange text on it for a CertC template for PowerPoint. But when you run the accessibility checker on PowerPoint, it does not come up with a contrast issue. So I was surprised when I took this same color combination and put it into Canva. And again, I got a contrast problem. So there are different levels of contrast. And so it's just, you've got to be mindful of this, because the other thing that I want to point out is that this was Canva's. So this is a contrast checker. If you go to certc.org and to our accessibility page, we have a link for this contrast checker. And so you can put in any colors using these hex codes, which again, hex codes, I guess I still have my identity doc up here. All of the colors in your brand, this is our brand guidelines, they all have these hex codes. They start with that pound symbol. And so that's what we would use to evaluate the contrast for this checker. So I've already copied and pasted in the two colors that Canva said were meeting its contrast guidelines. But I want to show you something, that if I use these colors and I put it into the contrast checker, it fails one of the levels. Now, there are multiple levels of contrast requirements for accessibility. That AA is kind of, again, that medium standard. But if you're working with a low vision population, for instance, you probably want to try to meet this AAA standard. It's a little bit stronger. And so again, it's all about, can we actually read the information? Can we see the text on the page? And so if you are working with low vision, I would suggest running it through a stronger checker than Canva, just to make sure that you're meeting those requirements. And before I click off of this, I also want to show that contrast does matter for the size of text. So what they mean by normal text is, I think it's 14 point and below. Oh, actually, I think it's down here. Let's just go look at it. Let me just tell you. Here it is. Okay, so large text is defined as 14 point and bold, or as 18 point and larger. So anything smaller than that is going to be considered normal text. So again, it's fairly intricate, but it's something to think about, especially if you're working with a lower vision population. All right, let me get back then to our accessibility checker. So we've already resolved my contrast issue on this page. And so you can see we've also got alt text, alternative text, as a suggested issue. So let me talk a little bit about how Canva handles alt text. So for those of you that don't know, alternative text is the text that goes along with an image that conveys the meaning and context within that image. And so I think a lot about what NASA's doing on alt text. They're really releasing a lot of images of like the deep space, those deep space images. So helping to describe what that image is showing. Now, what we're doing, at least what I do a lot, the images that I use might be considered decorative in that they are not adding anything. They're not conveying context or information that is not represented elsewhere. And so here is a great example. Canva has flagged all of these elements as possibly needing alternative text, but there's nothing in these images that is not shared elsewhere or affects the meaning in some way. So Canva doesn't do alt text for the document as a whole. It's not for this whole image. It is for the individual elements that make up your design. And so none of these things, this is decorative. This green background is decorative. These are all decorative. They are not adding anything to my design. And so all of them are decorative. And I'm going to click no alt text for all of them because everything's reproduced elsewhere. And honestly, this is another thing to know about Canva. It Canva's the alt text for Canva only gets exported if you're sharing things as a PDF. I am going to show a PDF here in just a second, but if you're generating this, like most of the time, I'm going to download this as a PNG or a JPEG or some other type of image file. The alt text doesn't get exported along with it. You have to go back and add it into whatever channel you're using it in, which is why we're going to cover social media next month. And actually, if you stay till the end, I'm going to just show you a quick tool that will help you write alt text that then you can use wherever your images are going to be shared. But again, it's good to go through and at least mark these as decorative, just in case that image, that data is shared somewhere, so that screen readers and other types of adaptive software know, there's nothing here. So according to Canva, we are all set for this one. And then I'd go ahead and download it and use it wherever I needed to. Okay. I did want to show you a couple other ways that this can get kind of tripped up. Here's a meme I made years ago and never shared. But I think this is a good example of one thing that I have run into, which is solving accessibility issues in one place can sometimes affect your design or where things show up elsewhere. So let's go ahead and address this low contrast text, and I'll just use the suggested colors to go ahead and put them in there. But now if I change this text to make it to match the document color, I'm going to get hit with a low contrast text. So my design says I can't have one color at the moment that is going to meet contrast requirements for all three of these text boxes. So maybe I need to go in and throw a box behind it or something to help increase the contrast so that I can use one font color and meet my contrast requirements. So just something to think about, again, that changing something in one area might affect the other. Okay, next one I want to show, because a lot of us are in public health and research, is graphs. Canva does not handle graphs very well, I will be perfectly honest. Canva seems to measure the contrast requirements against the background, not against each other. And I actually went and pulled up, I went and pulled up the, oh gosh, there it is. I went and pulled up the, this is the contrast ratio for graphs. The idea is that you're supposed to have that ratio for the different graphical objects as well. And so like, going back to where Canva's at here, it doesn't think there's any problems with any of these colors. And I don't know about you, I think this is really hard to read. So this is an area where I simply do not trust Canva's contrast checker, simply because this fails the eye test to me. This looks really hard to read. And what I think is interesting is that if I went and put these colors, this was one of the colors I used on that graph, and I put it into the contrast checker, and it fails everything. So again, it's not a perfect tool. It will get you farther, but depending on where you're working on, depending on, kind of who your audience is, it's something to at least know what the best practices are and where maybe some shortcomings are so that you can work around those. Okay, I am going to flip now to a PDF because I think that this is also someplace where we can add a lot of value. And so PDFs on Canva do get a slightly different treatment. The way that PDFs work and for accessibility is that a screen reader, which is where you're going to find this most often, where you're going to need alternative text, A screen reader is going to be able to read the text on the page if it's a PDF, it's a portable document format. That's what PDF stands for. If it's an image file, like a PNG or a JPEG, it can't read the text. And that's why we have to provide that alternative text to let people who can't see that image know what is that image sharing. So I've got a PDF here, and I will be perfectly honest, we forgot to run the accessibility checker on this before we sent it out. We made it public. And so the other day, I decided to run the accessibility checker on this to see just what is it going to say. So I did not fix any of the issues so that you all can see how I'm going to work through what the issues are on this PDF. So again, your accessibility checker is over here under accessibility, under file accessibility, and then check design accessibility. All right, so you can see these little blue dots all over our accessibility issues. And so we're going to start here with typography because it is the one I have not covered so far. Accessibility guidelines do recommend at least a 12-point or a 12-point font or higher, which is why you will see Canva recommending that we bump up our font size. Now, I'm not going to do this right now. Well, actually, no, we will do this one right now. So the problem here, and this is where the trade-offs do tend to occur, is that this document was an adaptation of something else we had already created. And we had gotten this language approved. Our stakeholders had all approved it. It had gone through its rounds of approval. And so as a health communicator, I'm always hesitant to change language too much because it might change the meaning. You could leave out important information. And again, I had gotten this through some rounds of experts before that all said, this is the information we think you should be sharing. So when we were adapting this, we had a lot of information that we had to try to get onto. We were trying to keep it as a single page kind of fact sheet. And so when I was working at, we did this within one of our interns. And so when I was working with her, we had the discussion about font size. I normally do not go below a 12-point font size, maybe 11, for accessibility reasons. However, watch this. If we increase our font size to 12-point for this document, we're not going to be able to get all of this stuff on this page. And so this was a trade-off that we made. We decided to go with a smaller font in order to get this product, out the door faster, I guess you might say. We needed it for Teen Driver Safety Week, which was a few weeks ago. And had we changed that language, it would have had to go back through those levels of approval to make sure that the language was correct. And because I had already kind of done that approval process, I knew what my stakeholders were going to say, and I didn't think that they were probably going to go for too many changes to the text, and or like editing, leaving things out. And so we had a big discussion about when do you maybe drop that font size and not. And so we made the decision to include all of the information and use a smaller font size for those purposes. Again, this is not necessarily what everyone's choice would be, right? There's different ways to look at it, but this is what we chose to do. Now, if I went back and did this again, I might try to find a way to bump up this text size a little bit more. But this is something that, again, as public health educators, as researchers, there will sometimes be trade-offs for these things. And so for me, it's about how can I balance these interests in a way that, recognizes, meets the most people where they are. I guess that's the way I put it. Okay, so that's typography. And again, Canva is going to flag anything that's lower than a 12-point. Just want to go back to contrast real quick to just point out again that depending on your size and who your population is you're working with, you might want to also look at contrast and font size. Canva does not look at that. It just looks at the size. Okay, and then the last thing I want to talk about on this page is the alternative text, the alt text. So once again, with a PDF, and that's how I would generate this, is a screen reader will read all of the information on the page. And so I want to go through then, there's a lot of visual elements here. but most of them are going to be decorative. And so I definitely want to go through and make sure that anything that's decorative, my logo's decorative, they don't need to know that. I'm skipping this one because I want to talk about it a little bit, but otherwise, you just go through and literally mark all of them as decorative. So hang on. Oops. This will take me just a second because we have a lot of elements here. And so you can see again, this is not for the document as a whole. This is for each individual element that's part of your design. And so this is why we're going to talk about alt text again next month, because most of the time you're going to be using these designs in different platforms. And so we want to make sure that we're adding those accessibility features. Okay, those have all been marked as decorative. And now I want to talk about this image. So you could go back and forth on this image. I don't think there's a right answer here. What I think about when I'm writing alt text is there something in the image that is not reproduced elsewhere? So maybe it's a graph. We talked about graphs. It could be that, maybe it's kind of like a badge that has some information in it that is then embedded in a PDF, right? So anytime you've got an image with text, or that the meaning of your image is not reproduced elsewhere, you want to add that alternative text. And so looking at this fact sheet, I'm not entirely sure this picture is adding anything that will be necessary to understand what the goal of this fact sheet is. So I personally would probably mark this one as decorative, simply because, again, I just don't think it's adding anything. I don't think you need it to understand what the goals are. So I would probably mark it as no alt text. But if you did want to, you would just click on an alt text, and you would just write out your alt text. If you don't know how to do this, by the way, if you're not familiar with alt text, give me a second. I'm going to show you something. But we also have resources at CertZ that will help you learn how to write alt text. So we just type something like that, right? And so you'd save it. And so now when you generate this as a PDF, if somebody is using a screen reader to engage with your PDF, that information will come out too. Okay, one other thing I wanted to show super quickly, because I think this is really, really helpful. And that is, there is a Chat GPT, I guess it's an assistant, for alt text specifically. Now, this is a free thing. You can sign up for Chat GPT for free. And I've got a link to this alt text generator on the accessibility page on CertZ. So if you go to the accessibility page, and I think if you scroll all the way down, it's somewhere in there. But I just wanted to show you that Canva does not do a great job with alt text. But once you download your images from Canva, you can use this little widget, this generator, to create your alt text. Obviously want to check anything, right? Anything that's coming out of AI or Chat GPT needs to be checked. But I just wanted to show, I thought it did actually a pretty good job of generating alt text for my promo graphic here. You can also ask it, if you were doing this for Instagram or something where you would need a caption, you can also ask this widget to generate a caption for you. And so then, you can just copy and paste that out of there. Again, check everything for accuracy. We know Chat GPT makes mistakes, but if you upload your image like this and ask it for alt text, chances are it does a pretty darn good job. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and open things up for questions. Again, I know that we throw a lot of information at one time here, and so I just want to make sure. So let me see. Any questions in the chat, or is there anything that anybody would like to redemonstrate? Anything else that we can be helpful with today? Just give a second and I'll share this last thing here as we wait. Okay, pretty quiet over in the chat. And I'm not seeing any hands raised. Okay, so once again, this is something that I know a lot of people have a passing familiarity with accessibility, but as public health practitioners, I think this is an area where we can be doing a lot better. And so it's our hope that, by showing you some of these skills and some of the easy things that you can do to help get us closer to a more accessible digital content, again, this is where public health, I think, can do a lot of good work. So, all right, not seeing any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up then. So as you can see, we are going to be covering we're going to be covering accessibility for social media next time on December 12th. So again, if you're registered now, if you're here today, you're already registered for that, but feel free to share this with people who might need that information. Quick little plug for another webinar we're doing next Tuesday on repurposing content for social media. This is with another program we run, Prevent Child Injury. And so we'll be showing you how you can use that content to create different types of content for your social media strategy. And so there's a registration link if you'd like to check that out. But in the meantime, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm gonna still try to get back onto some of the other social media channels soon too, but YouTube is where I do most of our work. Constantly posting new content there, just little tips and tricks as I come across them throughout the week that maybe I think would be great to share with others. And Laura's put that in the chat for us. So, all right. Well, I appreciate your attention. Thank you so much for joining us today. And let me know, info@certc.org if any questions come up in the meantime. But we will see you next time. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Oh, wait. Oh, hang on. We got a question that came in. Have you ever had issues converting Canva slides to PowerPoint? Yes. Okay, so yes, Canva slides to PowerPoint generally does not play well, but it's more of a design issue and a format issue than anything. Um, the Canva doesn't use a reader kind of outline in the accessibility, and that is incredibly important. And so if you're going back and forth, I would absolutely recommend running the checker on PowerPoint as well, because that'll fix things like your outline issues. Go back and watch Tracy's talk on that, and she'll cover kind of the reading outline and things like that. So Canva is good for some things, PowerPoint's good for others. I recommend you kind of play around with it and see kind of where if you are doing mostly in PowerPoint, just know that maybe the contrast issue might be a problem. If you're designing in Canva a lot, know that some of those slides and things like that might not take all of those accessible issues. All right, and then I've got Sydney. Did you have something? You had a hand raised.
Oh no, I was actually just going to tell you there was something in the chat. That's all.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you for that question. And again, if you've got anything else, feel free to reach out with me anytime. We're always happy to answer those questions. Yep, we'll see you then in December for social media and accessibility. So thanks, everyone. Looking for more HealthCom content? Check out all of our trainings and resources at cirtc.org.